everyone. My name is Deneen White, and I am the host of the Coffee in the Green Room podcast. Today, I have the distinct honor of interviewing Dr. Christina Tracy Stein. Thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Janine. I'm really happy to be here too.
Awesome. So I had the distinct pleasure of meeting you in San Diego not too long ago at an event where Michael Fomkin, who is a co-founder of VIP Ignite, is now a co-author of a book with your father. And I'm sure you get asked a lot about your dad. So can I just ask you just to tell me a little bit about what was it like being raised by Brian Tracy and how did that form who you are today?
Ooh, okay.
That's a crazy, I know that's a broad question.
No, it's good. It's good. There's so many directions to go. I think, obviously when you're a kid, you don't really notice so much about your parents until you're an adult and you can reflect back. But I would say, growing up with Brian as a father, he is a very powerful, intense man. And I learned a lot about, goal setting, time management. I think I've had a 10-year plan since I was 5 years old. So I definitely think that's impacted my ability to set goals and be really persistent and achieve them. As I reflect on it, he always had stories. So with lessons in terms of like something would happen and we'd ask a question and, he's sort of notorious for teaching his lessons with these sort of roundabout stories that come to wise piece of wisdom. And I definitely remember that growing up with him. He traveled a lot, as he became more international. And but the one great thing about it was when he was home, he really tried to be home. So like when he was in the role of father, he definitely would, spend time with us and talk to us and be very present. He and I used to go to breakfast every time he was in town. So that was sort of our way of connecting. And then later it turned into, we used to take walks around the golf course near our house. And that was very cool too.
That's awesome. Very cool. So I know you have a vibrant practice as well. So can you talk to me a little bit about your practice and how you help people?
Yeah, definitely. And I guess that kind of tails into the question from before. I grew up with a very like cognitive behavioral psychology background, and I was a very sensitive kid and I had a lot of feelings and I wanted to share my emotions and I was into relationships. And so when I went to college, I naturally got a degree in psychology and then I became a marriage and family therapist. And then in becoming a marriage and family therapist, I got married, had a kid, and had this sort of revolution experience of like, well, where did my sexuality go? Did my sexual desire go? Like it was just this, like the fine print of becoming a parent really hit me in the face.
I think that's part of being a woman too sometimes, because you're doing so many things for so many people. You're like, what happened to that feminine side of me?
Yes, exactly. And you're right. I think it happens to everyone. But I think there's like milestones or life events that kind of like put it in front of your face in a way that otherwise you don't notice. And so that happened to me and I realized it and didn't like it. And so I started doing a lot of research around sexuality and desire and partnership. And something I do just naturally is whenever I learn something, I feel compelled to teach other people. So I started teaching people about sexual desire and then ultimately went back to school, got a PhD in human sexuality. And my clinical practice has really focused on just helping couples and individuals really connect with their own sexuality and intimacy, but also connect with each other.
Wow.
So, yeah. And
that must be really rewarding.
Yes. Yes. I think I'm a romantic, so I love relationships and I love people having the experience of being in love and connected relationships. So facilitating that is very rewarding.
That's amazing. So I love that so much because I work in the entertainment industry as well as with entrepreneurs. And a lot of times it's not necessarily sexuality, but helping people get in contact with or getting connected to a part of themselves that sometimes they let lie dormant because of life.
Yeah, definitely.
Like Les Brown says, life keeps on lifing. And I feel like so many times as humans, we, because we're in survival mode, we push certain parts of us down that really need to come to life so that we can live a vibrant life. So I love that you're helping people with relationships, with their sexuality, because that's something we live in a very over sexualized world, right? Like in advertisements, sex sells. So you
Yeah.
see a lot of that, but I think there is a lot of that kind of has maybe not helped us become
No,
one with our sexuality. It's actually hurt it a lot.
I agree with you. I actually think that two things. One is like for me, sexuality is like a way of describing like the vitality that we experience when we're fully engaged, right? So like when you're lit up, I think that naturally connects to our life force energy, our sexual energy, our creative energy. Just it's like a confidence that's all intertwined.
Yeah.
Um, and that's why I think it brings relationships to life when people are able to go there. And I have noticed a trend in the last couple of years just with it's, it's become much more trendy to talk about sex and sexuality. And I feel like it almost makes it harder for people to go there
Yeah.
because it's not that it's dumbing it down. It's just making it, so easy. Like they talk about it as if it's so accessible and people should just be there. But in reality, like I think it's very hard for a lot of people to be vulnerable and
Yeah.
communicate needs and be okay with connecting or attaching to other people. So it's an interesting shift.
Yeah. It's fascinating that you help people with that. I probably could ask you questions for hours about that because I think like I grew up in a Christian church, so that wasn't something we ever talked about. It's like, no,
No.
we don't talk about that, even though it's part of who we all are as humans. So I'm fascinated by your studies and by how you're helping people because again, we live in a TikTok world, right? So people go on TikTok, they go on Instagram, they think that they know people, but the intimacy and vulnerability, like you said, it's completely different. So can you talk a little bit more about that? Like, because I think again, people think, oh, I know you because I followed you on social media, but like, can you talk a little bit more about that human connection and how to maybe create that? Just if you can give one tip on how to create that connection.
Yeah, I think one of the easiest ways to connect with people is to like own your weaknesses, own your imperfections. I love
Yeah.
Brene Brown, the like gift of imperfection, because
Yeah.
it's really true. And I have actually found that anytime I've been willing to share my story of struggling as a new mom, it immediately gives people permission to like own that part of their experience.
Yeah.
I think that it's hard to connect with people who seem all put together, but when
Yeah.
we like when you have a struggle with something, we all relate to struggle.
Yeah.
And it humanizes us when we can own the parts of ourselves that don't work perfectly. And then it allows for connection.
Yeah.
So I'd say don't be afraid of those parts. I feel like that's what I love talking about. Like, don't worry about if you're quirky because being quirky is like all about how you are as an individual. And people love that. People want to see who you are, not
Yeah.
see the perfect version of who you could be.
Yeah. We live in a world that lacks authenticity, and I feel like that's what you're talking about, like being quirky, like just be fully who you are. Like in the entertainment industry, so many times people are like, I want to be the next Denzel Washington. I want to be the next this person. I'm like, how about instead of being the next you be the first you, because that's what the world is looking for. And that goes not only for the entertainment industry, but also for entrepreneurs, because I think so many times entrepreneurs, we see someone like your father or Les Brown or these people that we look up to and we're like, oh my gosh, I will never achieve that level. But the reason that they are at that level is because of their authenticity. And something that you also help people with, entrepreneurs with, is creating offers. And I loved your process so much when we had the opportunity to be in the workshop with you, of the way that you kind of peel back the onion layers of how entrepreneurs will interact with their clients or their customers. So, can you talk a little bit about how your psychological background helps you help entrepreneurs connect with their customers in a more authentic way?
Well, so One of the things I've been doing is I've been, as we talked about, I've been working with my dad, and we co-facilitate something called the Brian Tracy Speaking Academy. And I've been doing that for over 10 years now. And so in that process, which is sort of where I've learned to really help entrepreneurs connect with their customers, is the idea of what is, when you're developing your offering, you need to know sort of what is the problem you're solving, or what is the goal you're achieving for your customer. And so, like, what do they get by buying your product or using your service?
Yeah.
And why does it matter to them? Like, how will it change their lives? And I think when we think about that, when we think about sort of the ultimate end game for whatever we're doing, whether we're providing a service or we're providing a product, that there's the value at the end will be important to our customers. Who are the people that care about that, and how will it impact their lives? So, talking about where you're going with it and why you're going there and what people get at the end, I think is a way of really being able to kind of know what journey you're taking around services and products.
Yeah. And it's so important. And that kind of goes back to authenticity,
Oh yeah.
because you have to know what your lane is as well. Because so many times, like in the world of business, there are like people who are kind of like a flash in the pan, people who come and go all the time. And you find so many times in the entrepreneur, and I guess I don't understand this fully, because I've never been someone who wanted to imitate. I've never been like, oh, I want to be this person or that person. But you see people, instead of creating their own way, creating their own personality, they're like, okay, well, if this works for this person, I'm going to do this. So can you talk a little bit about developing the confidence to be fully who you are as an entrepreneur? Because I think that kind of ties into what you're talking about taking the customer on a journey.
Sure. Yeah. So like, I think it's a matter of knowing why you're doing certain things. Like, again, there's this idea of like, you have to know that you're unique because of how you pursue something and how you think about it and what your experiences are. So everybody has different expertise and experience that they bring together to help develop their business. And that's what makes it unique. And I think that there's the confidence in order to like take that leap and do what it is you want to do and maybe not copy someone else, is to trust that you're providing something based on a need that you see. So that's why, talking about the goal to achieve or the problem to solve, when you're doing it for your customer, when you're not doing it for yourself because you think it's cool, you're doing it for their benefit, and you have the ability to provide that benefit, then that's what's going to make you successful. Because it's not about you as the entrepreneur, it's about what you can do for your customers and how it's going to impact their lives. So trusting that, instead of it being about you as that entrepreneur, letting it be about them. And the more it is about them, the more successful you are.
Yeah, that's very true. I love that so much. So Christina, what is something that really just excites you? What is something you're working on right now that has you so excited? It keeps you up at night sometimes.
Ooh, I work on so many things. Let's see. Well, Brian and I are actually talking about co-authoring a book together, which I'm really excited about because
That's cool.
yeah, we've written a couple books together in the past, and it's always been a really fun journey, working with my father, and I feel like, at this point, like my experience and expertise has continued to grow and improve. So now we're more collaborative. There's less of a hierarchy.
Wow.
So that's really exciting to me. And then the other thing that I'm working on is I've been, doing a lot of public speaking around personal and professional development. I've been doing this, Speakers Academy, training people how to speak, how to come up with their value offering. And so I'm really expanding my brand to really take the idea of how you intimately connect with people through communication and how that goes, from the bedroom to the boardroom. And
Oh,
helping people connect and gain confidence and actually become more successful in life, because the more we're connected to people, the more confident we are, the more we can actually impact change. And
yeah.
I really want to find a way to let the conversation around intimacy and connection and relationships to not just be a private thing, but for it to be something that is important in every part of your life. And that's where I'm going right now.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Not if, when that takes off, that's going to be revolutionary, because I think that so many times, again, and I don't know if it's the basis of the US being founded by Puritan. I don't know why, but it seems like we compartmentalize so many things. But if we start breaking down some of those barriers, we can change not only the US, but the world through doing that. I love that project.
And it's so much about not having language. It doesn't really matter. I would say the majority of the world is pretty conservative.
Yeah.
And because of that, there's just not that, like you said, you didn't grow up having conversations. So none of us were given the words. I mean, even I wasn't given the words. Like I
Yeah.
grew up with, Brian and everything, but and I think when we don't have the words, so we can't define it for ourselves, we can't share it with others. And like that's a big sort of starting point for any kind of connection, whether it's an intimate connection or it's a professional connection.
That's awesome. You're changing the world. You're going to be changing the world. And that's an amazing legacy to leave. So I'm really excited to hear about this, and I can't wait to see more
Yes.
about more of what you're working on. It's going to be amazing to see that.
Awesome. I appreciate that. And I will definitely share.
Thank you. All right. So Christina, how can people find you if someone wants to know what you're working on, or they want to follow you on this journey, or maybe they even are like, hey, you know what? I need some help on my intimacy. How can I work with her? Where can they find you?
Well, right now you can find me on my website is christinastein.com, and my email is drchristinastein@gmail, Dr. Christina Stein, or at Dr. Christina Stein is my Instagram. So any of those are great. And I look forward to hearing from you guys.
Awesome. Well, Christina, thank you so much for being here today on the podcast. I really appreciate this. Again, I appreciate your time. I know your time is very valuable. So thank you so much for taking the time to be here on the podcast with me. I really appreciate it.
Of course, of course. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. All right, guys. So if you are listening to this podcast, I want to make sure that you hit subscribe to the Coffee in the Green Room podcast, because here on Coffee in the Green Room, we have conversations you may not have on stage, but you have in the green room before you get on stage. So make sure you hit subscribe. Not only do I have Christina, I have so many amazing podcasts coming up. Make sure you hit subscribe, and I will see you on the next podcast. Thank you so much.